All right, let's talk about the Cambridge FCE Speaking exam. For a lot of people, it's a huge source of stress, but it really doesn't have to be. Today, we're going to demystify the whole thing so you can walk in there feeling confident, not anxious. Okay, let's get into it.
First things first, what does the exam room even look like? Well, it's actually pretty simple. It's just you, one other candidate, and two examiners. Now, one of those examiners, the interlocutor, is going to talk to you. The other one, the assessor, is just going to sit back, listen, and take notes. That's it. It's a simple formula.
So, here's our game plan for today. We're going to break down all 4 parts of the exam one by one. Then, we'll get into the really good stuff, how you're actually scored. And we'll wrap it all up with the most important takeaways. Let's jump in.
Okay, part 1. Think of this as the warm-up lap. It's designed to be a pretty low-pressure conversation to help you relax and just get used to speaking English in that room. The examiner isn't trying to trick you, promise. This whole part is super quick, only about 2 minutes. You'll get a couple of simple questions about you. Stuff you already know, like your hometown, what you like to do, that kind of thing. The trick here is to keep your answers short and sweet. 2 or 3 sentences is the sweet spot. And please, whatever you do, don't use a memorized answer. They can spot those a mile away. Just be natural. So, check out this example. It's a perfect response. The person answers the question directly. I'm into oil painting. But then they add a little bit more, the why. They talk about the city's views being an inspiration. That little extra detail, that's what makes it a great, natural answer. That's gold.
All right, moving on to part 2, which I like to call the picture challenge. This is where things get a bit more interesting. You're not just answering questions about yourself anymore. Now you've got to analyze and talk about a couple of photos. Okay, so the clock starts and you have 1 minute. In that minute, you've got 3 main jobs. You need to compare the photos, briefly describe what you see, and, this is the most important part, actually answer the question the examiner asks you about them. So many people just describe the photos for a full minute, but that's a big mistake. You got to do all 3. Now this slide, this is your secret weapon for part 2. Having some of these phrases in your back pocket will make you sound so much more fluent. Instead of just saying picture 1 has this and picture 2 has that, using words like in contrast or a common theme is, that's what shows you have a higher command of the language. And here are 2 little pro tips that make a huge difference. First, when you're describing the action in a photo, use the present continuous. So, it's the woman is reading a book, not the woman reads a book. Second, and this is a super common error, it's always in the picture, never on the picture. Nailing these little details really shows you know your stuff. Okay, part 3. This is where everything changes. It's no longer just about you and the examiner. Now, it's all about you and the other candidate. It's called the collaborative task for a reason. You're supposed to work together, like a team. How you start this part really sets the tone. Instead of just jumping in with your own ideas, being polite and interactive is key. Using a simple phrase like, "Should I begin?" or "Would you like to go first?" That immediately shows the examiner you know this is a team effort. It's a small thing that makes a big impression. Let's see what this looks like in action. So, you have a candidate, Juan, and he starts off by choosing one of the topics and giving his opinion with a solid reason. It's a great, clear way to get the ball rolling. But now, the important part is how his partner, Marion, responds. In Marion's response, this is just perfect. Seriously, look at this technique. First, she validates Juan's point. I'm totally with you on that one. Then, she uses that magic word, however, to add her own perspective and smoothly pivot to a new idea. This back and forth, this is exactly what the examiners want to see. And that brings us to the final hurdle, part 4, the deeper discussion. This part flows right from the topic you just discussed in part 3, but now the examiner is going to push you a little further with more abstract, big-picture questions. So what's the real difference between that warm-up in part 1 and this deep dive in part 4? Well, part 1 was all about you, your life, your hobbies. Part 4 is about big ideas, people in general. Your answers need to be a lot more developed, and the examiner will probably encourage you and your partner to discuss them. This is your final sprint. So, you might get a question just like this one. Notice, it's not asking what job do you want. It's asking for your opinion on a broader trend in society. This is where you need to show you can handle more complex ideas and give a well-supported answer.
So we've walked through all 4 parts. Now for the moment you've been waiting for. How is this whole thing actually scored? Let's pull back the curtain and crack the code on the marking criteria so you know exactly what they're listening for.
Your score isn't just one big number. It's actually an average of 5 different areas, and each one is just as important as the others. You've got grammar and vocabulary, of course, then discourse management, which is just a fancy way of saying how well you connect your ideas, pronunciation, interactive communication, and finally, global achievement, which is kind of the examiner's overall impression.
Let's just zoom in on one of these to see what it really means. For grammar and vocabulary, they're looking for range. Are you using different tenses, or are you stuck in the simple present? Are you using synonyms, or just repeating the same basic words over and over? Can you form more complex sentences? Showing off this variety is how you get those higher scores.
I know that was a ton of information, so let's just boil it all down into one final super simple checklist you can use to get ready.
All right, here it is, your final cheat sheet. Remember to make eye contact, whether it's with the examiner or your partner. Be a good partner, don't interrupt. Show off your vocabulary and grammar. And here's a big one. If you make a mistake, don't panic. Just calmly correct yourself. It actually shows competence. And finally, give full answers, especially in parts 3 and 4. And, of course, practice. I want to leave you with this last thought because it's so important. Nobody is expecting you to be perfect. You're allowed to make small mistakes. The real goal is to communicate clearly, to interact well, and to show what you can do with the English you have. You focus on that and you'll do great. Good luck!